the branch secretary of Reform UK there, Karen McIver, who joins us to talk about none other than Hadish Kebatu, all over the news for the last few days on account of how he was accidentally, mistakenly released from prison after just 3.5 months behind bars after assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman while he was an illegal migrant at the Bell Hotel in Epping, sparking, of course, protests. We've been covering those for many months, and now we're told back in custody and is going to be deported. Karen, I suppose just first of all, just what's your general reaction to what's happened?
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for having me on. Obviously, when the news broke about him being released by mistake, we was all horrified, and our thoughts, as always, are always with the family here.
Absolutely.
But now, since the news broke yesterday that he's been caught, I mean, obviously, it's a huge relief that he has been caught. I don't understand why it has to take so long in this day and age of Big Brother when we're filmed everywhere we go, stations, everything. I don't understand why it took so long.
And I mean, it was very much played out in the news, like, after this big manhunt and police and Justice Secretary being very praising the police. It took them 2.5 days.
Exactly. I mean, I think we're stupid. It should have been caught. If it was any of us doing anything wrong, we would have been caught straight away. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So obviously, I'm absolutely really relieved that he's been caught. I understand there's lots of other people like him that get released by mistake. Where are they? I understand there's over 260 that have been released. Where are they? Have they all been caught? It's good to see that he's being deported this week. Why aren't the others being deported? How come he can be deported so quickly? How about all the others? Can they be deported so quickly? Julia, what I will say, last night I was at the protest. I've been going every Thursday and Sunday.
Because they're still going on.
Yeah, and you know, last night there was a lot of new people coming out and supporting us. And what this is actually doing, people are trying to divide our community. Actually, it's really uniting us. We are standing strong together. We're all families, local families, and we're peacefully protesting, and we will continue to do it until the hotel closes, Julia. Yeah. It's next to a secondary school. It's so inappropriate.
Well, I mean, it's already been proven. I mean, you're right. That everyone knows you're right. My only concern about closing these hotels, and I do want them closed, I've got one near me. My only concern is, where do they go then? Because unless they are either out of the country, in prison, or in some sort of detention camp where they can't walk the streets, we are talking about people being, living, you say they're right next to a secondary school. Oh, right, well, in that case, they'll just be living next to the girls or the boys, going to that secondary school in a house next door to them. And then we won't know where they were. I think the government wants them to be dispersed, same as the last Tory government did, because then we won't have a specific place to protest outside. And then they can just pretend it's all gone away.
They underestimate the British people. They think we're silly and we're just going to roll over and put up with it. We're not. We're not. We follow the law. We do everything right, and we bring our children up properly. We pay our taxes. We do everything as we're supposed to do. And so should they, and they're not, and they think they can just drop these people in our communities and we're not going to say anything. Well, actually, they're wrong, and they've got a big challenge on their hands, because I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
No, I don't at all. What do you make of this new report out from the Home Affairs Select Committee? It's an all-party committee, basically saying, the costs have trebled of hotels. They're doing these terrible deals lasting 10 years. Again, they clearly had no intention, either the Tories when they did this or Labour when they've got in, because they've been updating contracts, that this is going to be going away anytime soon, spending a fortune, allowing these companies to make huge profits, terrible negotiations, and we're stuck with the bill.
You know what? I'd like to see all of those contracts doged. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see where the money really goes. I'd like to see who knows who. How come this person got that contract and that person got that contract?
Who knows who?
Yeah, I just feel there's it's panic. It's reacting instead of planning. Panic reacting, and the good old British people have just got to foot the bill and put up with it. It's just so wrong on every level. It has been so wrong on every level for a long time. It's wrong under the Conservatives, and it's very, very wrong under Labour. We need radical change, Julia. Somebody has to say stop. We can't carry on. Britain is broken. We can all see that in our everyday lives.
Yep.
Whether it's affected in our purses, whether it's affected, you know, with our health. You know, doctors. All you hear all the time is people can't get doctor's appointments. People can't get. You know,
people are going abroad to go private, for goodness' sake.
It's ridiculous, and we work so hard as British people. We work so hard, and we're a really giving nation. You know, we help charities all over the world. You know, and right now we need to help ourselves, our own country, and we need to. It's like the aeroplane analogy. You know, you help yourself, then you can help everybody else. And right now we need to focus on ourselves, and we need to help ourselves. Our country is broken, and it really, really needs sorting out.
Yeah, and this is the thing. And again, when people they shout racist, bigot, you know, all these people, and you know, oh, someone's got a union flag or an England flag when they're outside at a protest. Oh, they must be awful. Quite okay for the new deputy leader of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, to stand in front of 4 of our national flags. I made a jokey tweet saying, oh look, Lucy Powell at a far right rally, because that's what they think about anyone else with our national flag. But I think it's really interesting the way you guys and lots of the protesters on these pink protests say, look, this is about women, this is about mums and sisters and aunts and grandmas and daughters, saying we need to be safe, because at the end of the day, the brunt of the cost of illegal migrants, huge numbers of young undocumented men coming from far afield, largely from countries where their culture and their attitude towards women is vastly different from ours. The victims are women and girls.
Yeah, Julia, can you imagine if we take this back 2 years? Can you imagine if the Conservatives were in government at the moment, and the Conservatives have made this huge error? The Labour in opposition would be calling for all of their heads, all of them to resign. Yeah. You know, now let's see how they react. Let's see what happens to David Lammy. Let's see what
should
happens.
he resign?
Well, I think he should. It's under his watch, and he'd be calling for if there.
Oh, he would.
First, he'd be calling for it. You know, there's too much double standards going on. You know, it's like, do as I say, not do as I do. No, the British people see through all that. We're clever people. We see through it all.
Chris Phillips, he's a former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, and he's a former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Julia.
Where do we start? We have quite a lot of stories to get through. Let's get straight to it. First up, we've got to talk about the madness of this sex offender, the Epping migrant. He's going to be deported. What do you make of this and the manhunt to find him? Because apparently everyone's been praising the police. Took them 2 days to find this guy, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I mean, listen, never underestimate the amount of cock-ups we have in our society, in policing, in prison services. These things happen on a regular basis. I mean, there will be hundreds of stories, similar stories. The fact that this man was so consequential, such a big issue in the country, it just goes to show just how slack things can be. And no matter what systems you put in place, as a senior manager in the police, I remember putting in sensible plans, and then people just didn't follow them. And so these things do happen. The fact that he got caught is great. And
should
that
heads
he leaves
roll?
the country quickly.
And if so, whose? People are saying David Lammy, the Justice Secretary's head should roll.
Well, you know, it's very easy. I'm not a fan of David Lammy whatsoever, but it's pretty difficult to blame someone at the top end of the tree when such simple mistakes are made. And we've all been through it. Yeah,
that's kind of where I am, because especially this isn't a one-off. And again, if the Home Secretary, the Justice Secretary has to resign every time someone is released accidentally from prison, that happened 260 times in the last year. It's gone up, not down under Labour, interestingly, though. Something's going wrong.
Yeah, well, let's be quite honest. The lack of funding into our services, such as policing, such as prisons, will have caused these problems. You know, I remember the police having the Federation saying when Theresa May was going through these cuts, they will have consequences. People, you know, bad things will happen, and you've got to accept it. Yeah. If you're going to cut the amount of spending on police stations, police and prisons, you're going to have these cock-ups happening from time to time.
And by all accounts, HMP Chelmsford, this has happened. There's been reports, investigation back in 2021 saying absolute chaotic management, hopeless. Most of the prison officers have only less than 2 years' experience in the job. I mean, you know, you're talking about people who are just sort of flailing around. No wonder you see these mistakes. A bit of a wake-up call. Let's talk about the wake-up call on grooming gangs. We've still got this ongoing issue about a grooming gang inquiry set up over 4 months ago. It doesn't have a chair. It's lost a load of the young women who were victims of grooming gangs as young teenagers who've walked away. Calls for Jess Phillips to resign. What we had all along from our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, is it's not really happened here. When questioned by Susan Hall of the Tories at Greater London Assembly early in the year, he pretended sort of not to understand the question, not to know what she was talking about. I mean, he was incredibly dismissive of the whole issue when it is highly unlikely that it's happened in, 50-odd towns and cities around the country. But miraculously, there have not been grooming gangs in London. Nothing to see here. Now we know the Met Police is investigating 9,000 suspected grooming cases in the capital. What do you say about that?
Well, this is a microcosm of the politicians and senior police officers who have just repeatedly not want to get into this subject. They don't want to deal with the fact that we have got this going on in our cities. And it's taken years and years and several notable people to come out and shout about this for anything to be done. And I think it continues to happen. Sadiq Khan doesn't want to admit that this is going on in London. Of course it is. Absolutely. 100%. And it's been going on for many years. And the sooner we get to grips with this and lose this nonsense political correctness and just get on with dealing with policing and doing it properly, then we'll get to the bottom of these things. It's
quite bizarre, and again, we've discussed this on the show so many times. Even on a previous radio station back in 2012 discussing this. It still blows my mind that anyone would try and cover this up and not try and stop it. I can't begin to get my head around that.
But this political correctness and I don't like the term wokeness because it doesn't really mean a great deal to me. What we've seen is people being scared to deal with the problems that we have in our cities. And they're scared to do it because they don't want to be called racist. They don't want to be called sexist. They don't want to be called all the ists that you can imagine. And so nothing happens, or certainly it's brushed under carpets. And we've got to get to the bottom of that and stop it. And deal with it properly.
Absolutely. Let's also talk about the police being running scared. I mean, there's no doubt they're running scared of those pro-Palestinian demonstrations every 2 weeks across central London. And it certainly puts the fear of God into many Jewish people and other people who support Israel's right to exist. Seems to be fairly basic, that. And in terms of intimidation and people being arrested by the police and stopped by the police for, the deliberate provocation of looking Jewish or wearing, the Star of David or the like. And yet, we saw in Tower Hamlets in the East End of London, as I can see, across the river outside the studio window right now, where we're talking about, UKIP wanted to hold a march in Tower Hamlets at the weekend. They were banned by the police from doing that. Well, so we suddenly discovered that the police can ban a march that they believe would be intimidating or provocative. But they did allow another march to go ahead, which led to huge numbers of young masked Muslim Bangladeshi men, mostly wearing black, hooded, vast majority, I would say, from the pictures I have seen, wearing masks over their faces, and some pretty unpleasant chants, some very questionable flags, also pro-Palestinian flags, and the Bangladeshi flag. But no doubt at all, a highly intimidating atmosphere on the streets of the East End of London. The police just stood by and watched.
Yeah, and it's there's nothing short of intimidation, and just to the fact of this mask wearing, I think we've got to get to grips with this and allowing it to happen, because they're doing it to hide their features so that they don't get arrested for substance.
Well, one local businessman was on social media selling £5 balaclavas, he said, to Muslim brothers, saying no face, no case, meaning they can't identify you, they can't prosecute you.
Yeah, I mean, you can get around that, believe me, in policing. We've been doing that for years and taking face masks off people and photographing them as they come and go before they put the mask on. We've done that before. We have got to get to a situation where policing is respected again, and that will only come when we deal robustly with incidents like this. I lived through and I worked through the riots in Brixton, Toxteth and all those situations. Public order on the streets has always been an issue in the UK and across Europe, but we've got to be willing to deal with it and deal with it robustly.
Yeah, and certainly it doesn't feel like we're doing it right now. Meanwhile, the Met Police, we were talking about them, both those last two stories, have been spending huge sums on woke diversity programmes. I mean, just what we really want them to be doing. £5.2 million a year, Met Police, on woke diversity initiatives, and saying they've got a £250 million funding gap, but they're spending money on International Pronouns Day and Be Kind to Humankind Week and the National Tsunami Awareness Week. I mean, in their diversity calendar of 63 events. I mean, this is madness.
Oh, I mean...
everything was in that sound.
Oh, gee. I mean, listen, the police have been underfunded for many years, and this is causing huge amounts of problems. We all know that. We've got a mounted branch that's been reduced. We've got dog units, which are absolutely vital in policing the streets of London and elsewhere. Absolutely vital. And then you see wastages like this. And a simple senior officer should be able to say at a stroke of a pen,
yep,
this is not happening,
done.
Stop it straight away, get rid of it. It's, aside from anything else, aside from the waste of money, it looks awful, and it's not what we as police officers should be doing.
Absolutely. Liam Halligan, economist and author of the brilliant Substack, When the Facts Change. Good morning to you, Liam.
Good to be with you, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get straight to it. The economy, not in a good state. All the polls show no one expects it to get in a good state anytime soon. But one of the biggest concerns today and over the weekend has been this workers' rights bill that the government is bringing in, Angela Rayner's big set piece, and how much this is going to damage, well, basically, weirdly, the chances of workers getting a job or keeping a job. Tell us what the problem is.
Well, we're both children of the 70s, Julia.
All right, don't shout about it.
We look pretty well for it, don't we? And we remember, because we grew up amidst it, really ghastly industrial relations, millions of jobs, days lost to strike action across the UK economy every single year, where really the trade unions held the government to ransom, leading to statements like, who runs Britain? The 1979 election was, who runs Britain? Is it the government or is it the trade unions? We're not back there at the moment, but across the public sector, about 50% of workers plus are unionised, and about 25% across the economy as a whole. And Labour wants that increased. Labour wants to give a lot more power to trade unions. And with this employment rights bill, it's being dubbed the Unemployment Rights Bill. It's about to finish its passage through Parliament. What's happening is an awful lot of rights, in additional rights, are being given to workers, to the extent that employer groups, mainstream business leaders are saying, look, this is just going to lead to massive unemployment. Unemployment's already gone up sharply since last July, since Labour took office. Their increase in employer national insurance, which I know you talk about with small business people all the time, has led to a fall in hiring. And if you have, unfair dismissal rights from day one, instead of the 2-year probation period, if you have rules that allow trade unions to come into your workplace, private sector companies, once a week at any time that they like, then all of that is going to put employers off. It's going to be bad for workers.
That's the thing. I understand people want to protect people, particularly the idea of people being exploited on zero-hours contracts, although most people are happy to work on zero-hours contracts. But certainly, a youngster I know who was on a zero-hours contract turned up for a shift. They ended up actually closing down the business for various reasons. They would have been covered by insurance, but everyone got paid for 2 hours instead of 7 hours, even though they turned up for their shift. And there's no legal right. No, we want to have reasonable rights for people to be treated fairly. But we've also all known people who've been hired who apparently do a very good interview and then turn out to be useless or a nutcase. I've certainly worked with a few of those over the years, and frankly, I'm not entirely sure I want them to have 100% the same rights as someone who's been there for a year or 2 years on day one. This is basic stuff. Is the issue that the Labour people pushing this, they've never actually run a business themselves?
You and I have discussed this a lot, Julia. There's no one at the top of government that has any genuine hands-on business experience, no one who's actually built a business, no one who's had to make payroll. They're generally sort of public sector princes and princesses that, the money just appears in their account because they turn up and go to meetings. But we know
Zoom.
we know working from home makes you much more productive, all that time grazing from the fridge. Now we know that the backbone of the British economy, where most of the growth is, where 2/3 of the employment is, where so much of the innovation is. Our drive comes from our small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yep.
You have all kinds of small and medium-sized enterprises who don't tend to be run by political people. They tend to be run by pragmatic people.
Yeah.
And
who can do maths.
Who can do maths, because if they don't get their maths right, they can't make their mortgage payments. They can't go to the supermarket and get their weekly shop. Very self-reliant people. And they are now warning loudly that if this bill goes through without the amendments that the Lords have put on it to strike a better balance, we want a balance between workers' rights and the ability of entrepreneurs and firms to hire people. Yep. Unless the balance is struck in a way that's better than what the unionised Labour leaders want it to be, then we are just going to end up with a lot more unemployment. Yeah. Unemployment rights will resemble, the country they'll resemble most if this bill goes through, Julia, is Spain, right? Spain, great place, many Spanish friends, love it. The trouble is Spain has got 10.5% unemployment and a chronic level of youth unemployment. Do we want that for our young people? Do we want that for our economy? What's progressive in that, Angela Rayner?
That's the sad thing. But what's interesting is some of the biggest critics of this now, not just business groups, but the Resolution Foundation, the left-wing think tank, it used to be headed until the last election by Torsten Bell, who's now one of the Prime Minister's closest advisors. So we'll see. We've literally got about 30 seconds, but the mansion tax, no, it's not going to affect most of us. Most of us do not live in £2 million homes. But the idea of a 1% bill for every everything over the value over 2 million, a tax on on the wealthy, that's not going to go down well with a lot of people, though, even people who don't have those homes themselves.
It's going to be extremely divisive. It's going to raise very little tax, actually. Yeah. The governor of the Bank of England, former governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, has just said, instead of trying to get, £500 million here, £500 million there, stop, Rachel Reeves, think about what you're doing and understand we're now at a point where the more tax you put on the economy, the less growth you're going to get. You're going to drive the economy off the cliff.
She's literally going in the wrong way. But again, also, who decides what price a home is worth? I mean, it could be worth something to one person. If you can't sell it for that price, who's going to value at that price? And how do they know? Well, if you've done a load of work on your home and it's increased in value, what they have a right to inspect your home? I mean, we are in some really dodgy territory there, aren't we? Oh, the horrors that await us. No, not on Halloween, but next month in the budget. A very, very good morning to you, Sebastian.
Good morning, Julia. Good to see you.
Well, lovely to see you. So, how bad is it going to be? Because we're hearing an awful lot about mansion tax. Now, most of us don't live in a £2 million home, but will there be implications for the rest of us? But also the idea of this productivity downgrade from the Offices for Budget Responsibility, suggesting that actually the Chancellor may have to tinker around with taxes affecting ordinary working people.
Yeah, it's that weird time of year, isn't it? It's budget advent almost, where every day leading up, you open the advent calendar and there's another rumour, there's another potential tax rise coming your way. The reality is we just don't know, and we don't know what's going to happen on, the 26th of November, just under a month away now. The reality is, there could be tax rises. Who knows? The fact of the matter is...
No, there will be tax rises. There will be tax rises. The point is who they're going to hit. But also, crucially, will they actually bring in more money, or will they do so much damage to the economy that actually the government takes a bigger share of a smaller pie?
Yeah, you're right. And I think the government has been really clear about growth and that being a very firm part of its mission. The question is whether those, as you say, whether those tax policies will get it there. I like the idea of the richest paying a little bit more. I think it's fair, especially in times like this where, look, everybody is struggling. And I think if you are fortunate enough and lucky enough and capable enough to have made a bit of money in your life, it is almost your duty to your fellow countrymen to be giving a little bit more.
But the rich, I'm not here to defend the rich people. I'm sure they can afford it, but they are already paying more. Top rate of tax over 150k is 45%. Plus, you add in national insurance. For a lot of that, they're actually paying more than half of their incomes in tax. We know that the tax burden, it's very, very clear on independent analysis that the tax burden has gone up massively on the top 10% of earners at a time when it has gone down actually relative for people on more ordinary incomes. When we say we want the rich to pay more, yeah, of course the rich should pay more. but how much more is fair?
Yeah, and look, I can't give you a number on that, but I think the broad principles...
Well, what's the little bit more? An extra 1 or 2%? What, you put a bit more on income tax? What do you say?
Well, I think if you're really rich, if there is another penny on the top rate of income tax, for example, not necessarily a policy I'm advocating, but you're going to feel that a lot less if you are really rich. And I'm talking about, multiple six figures.
Yep.
That's not really going to change your quality of life. You're not going to go and start looking at prices in the supermarket.
The trouble is, are there that many people who are earning those salaries that's going to bring in the sort of numbers we want? Because what the people want is, let's face it, what the public wants is to have really low taxes and great public services that someone else pays for. That's, for all the polling, that's what people want. They want their taxes to go down, put the taxes up on the rich, or on some nefarious way of finding the money, but great public services. But you know as well as I do that if you look at the continent, you look at the countries with great public services, really can deliver on health and education and the like, they are funded by much higher taxes on the average worker.
Yeah, you're completely right. Half of my family is Danish, and I see that at work when I go to Denmark. People pay really high taxes, but they get a lot for it as well. And I think that is the deal. If you're going to raise taxes, you have to make the case for whether you're going to get childcare, you're going to get free school meals, you're going to get everything else in return. And it feels like a good deal for normal working people.
But we don't feel that because we're paying more and more tax, and actually our public services are getting worse.
Well, I think that speaks to the crunch that we're in where, and I say this all the time, we never really got over the 2008 crisis because we voted in a government in 2010 who cut and cut and cut to the bone. I don't think there's anything else to cut anymore.
I hate to tell you that the austerity that George Osborne brought in as Chancellor in 2010 was actually the same plan Alistair Darling, the then Labour Chancellor, had planned.
Sure, I'm not a fan of it, whoever decided to...
What should they have done? Just spent more money that we didn't have?
I think there was scope to borrow then when interest rates were much lower. Now they are high. We borrowed loads when interest rates were low. And you know what happened to interest rates? They went up. And then we couldn't afford to pay the money back, which is why we're paying £110 billion a year, simply paying the interest to service our debt, not paying any of it off. I mean, who would have thought the interest rates would go up again, eh? No, you're right. And I think, I was a business journalist for many years, and there was that general belief that these beautiful times of low interest will never end. And of course they have. And here we are at, what are we?
People in the city, the experts in the city, what got us into this mess in 2008. So forgive me for not trusting their or your judgment on these things.
No, you're right. It was
you keep saying that, but then you want us to tax everyone more. Here's the thing. You tax very rich people more. They're not like us. They leave.
Well, you say that, and I just haven't seen the data on it. There was a lot of stories floating around on that, and you dig into it, and it turns out that they're looking at people's LinkedIn pages and where they're saying that they work. It's just not scientific. So I've seen no evidence that people are leaving.
There's plenty of evidence from the London housing market. There's plenty of evidence from every country that has done this that people leave. France did it. Francois Hollande, when he was president, he introduced a massively high income tax on rich people, and thousands upon thousands of people left. And those are the people who are paying the huge sums of money that we need. Here's the thing. What about the mansion tax? Because, again, there's this view, well, people should pay more. And certainly, the council tax, I think, my council tax is probably the same as Buckingham Palace's. You think, well, that doesn't seem reasonable. But the idea of 1% of the value of your home over £2 million being taxed, the reality is, look, £2 million, you are looking at, you've got tennis courts and an indoor and outdoor pool. If you're in Staffordshire, £2 million will buy you that. In large parts of London, someone could have bought a home they've scraped and saved for. They've worked 2 families and mortgaged, desperately trying to make ends meet for years. They've bought a home. It's gone up in value because of our mad housing market. It's now could possibly hit 2 million. And it could be a 4-bedroom house in a normal terrace street, but in a quite nice part of town. Are you thinking that they've got, out of taxed income, a spare £10,000 a year or whatever if their home goes up in value?
Yeah, it's a really hard one to comment on because we don't know the mechanics of this policy. We haven't seen it in full. Are we talking about going after people who've already bought their home 20 years ago and it's just gone up and up and up in value and it's crossed that 2 million threshold? Or are we talking about rich people coming in now dropping that 2 million and then being asked to pay a little bit more. I think you're talking about two very different camps of people there. And if someone has the money for £2 million house now, they're going into it with that knowledge. It comes back to that idea that you mentioned as well of people leaving. And I think we really talk down Britain and talk down London when we say things like that, because there are so many things that draw people to Britain that aren't just the amount of money they have to pay. I was stunned the other day. I read a news article. Apparently Ryan Gosling's moved here now. Is one example, but come on, one of the big stars.
Relatively near me, but not near enough, unfortunately.
Well, there we go. I hear he's a hit at the school gates. But choosing to come here and make London.
Well, no, and that's it. No, and again, but by the way, you know, the Remainers in particularly in Labour, they were talking about how Brexit would hit our city of London and things like that. No, people weren't all going to move to Frankfurt. You can walk across Frankfurt in 20 minutes. I've been to Frankfurt. People aren't going to move to Frankfurt where they've been living in London. But we've got Rachel Reeves apparently has said today that Rachel Reeves has blamed Brexit for pushing up inflation, addressing an investment summit in Saudi Arabia. It's always Brexit's to blame, isn't it, as opposed to really rubbish government policies.
Well, that's the curious thing. For a long time for Labour, it wasn't. And we went through that period of, my God, we've just got to make this work. We've got to grasp the nettle.
When
and
did
try
that
to
happen?
Out of this.
I must have missed that memo.
Oh, it's been the narrative for many years now.
Okay, sorry, are you kidding me? Because I remember the man who's a leader of your party for 3.5 years trying to actually prevent Brexit from happening and saying all our woes were related to it.
Yes, but that was before he became leader of the opposition, then the Prime Minister. And then you're in charge. Then you've got to make decisions, haven't you? And, you know, we certainly haven't marched back into the customs union or the single market. Well, I mean, I personally think there may be a case for that in time.
There we go.
Because we have, I voted to remain, and I think it was the right thing to do to leave, because it was what people asked to do, and it would have been in all sorts of mess if we'd gone against the will of the people. But in time, we may just feel that the economic pain, the daily grind is too much.
Of having to run our own affairs, always too much. Trevor Kavanagh joins us. He's former political editor at The Sun. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
So much to talk about. Let's get straight to the latest promise. They're going to get all of these, 10,000 channel migrants out of hotels, out of the 32,000 who are currently in hotels, out of the 102,000 who are currently in the country in other accommodation, and they're going to get them into military barracks, starting with 900 up in Scotland and in East Sussex. I mean, problem sorted, Trevor. Yeah, all goes away.
Well, as you said earlier, Julia, believe it when you see it. I mean, this is a tiny proportion of the numbers who have come into this country in recent times. If they got 10,000 into these barracks, which, by the way, are going to be pretty grim accommodation, because the poor old squatties who had to live in these rat-infested, damp homes across the country have been complaining about them for decades. And, you know, human rights people are not going to allow foreign invaders, as I would call them, to come and live in places that the troops don't like. So, I mean, look, this isn't going to work. It's not going to solve the problem. No. They shouldn't be coming, and that's that.
And this is the thing. We were discussing with Tom Sater a bit earlier. Labour, and I think the Tories to a large extent as well, at least they paid lip service pretending to care. But the Labour Party, I mean, you've known a lot of these people for years. When you were political, you'd have known some of these people as just, little lowly, bag carriers, and now they're in the cabinet. They genuinely don't really think that this mass invasion, as you say, of young, military-aged men on our shores, undocumented from far-flung lands with very different cultures, they don't actually really think it's a problem. They think the problem is us talking about it.
Yes, they think the problem is with the vast and overwhelming majority of the British people who stupidly elected them. And
all right.
I think that, but this is a serious, serious problem. We have been invaded. We are being invaded by the day by countless numbers. I know that there is a rounded figure, but we really don't know how many. But it's in the hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of people coming undocumented from various countries, not least Pakistan and Afghanistan, where Islamic State has quite a strong foothold.
Yep.
What percentage of those tens of thousands might be either Islamic State or sympathizers? I would say quite a significant proportion. And when you see what was going on in the streets of Tower Hamlets over a few days ago, when people in balaclavas, which I think are hideous and sinister and should be banned along with the burqa, in fact, ahead of the burqa, that is a threat to our country which has yet to manifest itself on the streets of Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredibly sinister. And again, the police banning a UKIP march, saying that would be provocative, promote tensions and violence, but not thinking that a load of men in masks and balaclavas and hoodies, pretty much all wearing black, carrying foreign flags, Bangladeshi flag, the Palestinian flag, and shouting Allahu Akbar. Like, no, in no way is that intimidating. Not at all. No one's going to think that that's going to be provocative.
No, and we keep prefacing every remark that we make about this problem by saying most Muslims are decent, law-abiding people, which is true. But that simply does not apply to the very visible, large number of people who are on the streets of Tower Hamlets, the biggest Muslim community in this country, untouched by the police, unmolested by police, while, as you say, a small group of protesters from UKIP, which is now basically redundant, were barged away to some other place.
Absolutely.
That is an indication of this, what's going to be happening on the streets if Nigel Farage ever wins office.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, it's interesting. We'll talk about that, the grooming gangs. But I want to ask you just about David Lammy, first of all, dubbed Calamity Lammy by Robert Jenrick, his shadow as Justice Secretary. How much do you blame David Lammy for the Epping migrant sex offender being released accidentally? Is it his fault? Or actually, can a lot of the blame be laid not just at human error in one particular prison, but actually on cuts since 2010 to the justice system?
Yes, the justice system has been the poor relation of government spending in the public sector for decades, and it's always the one that can absorb the latest cut to probation service, to court hearings, to the whole process from arrest to trial has been cut to the bone. And Chris Grayling deserves a great deal of blame for that, a Tory cabinet minister.
Although he would have been doing the bidding of George Osborne, who was then Chancellor.
Well, George Osborne too, but you can include him in almost everything that's gone wrong with the last 15 years of Tory government. So, yes, it's a lot of people's fault, but the simple fact is that not only have the Tories got a lot to answer for, so has Labour, which had 14 years to prepare for this, knowing full well what the problem was. And they haven't. I mean, Lammy is not just an incompetent buffoon. He doesn't really care.
I mean, I don't think many people would disagree with that, probably within his own party as well. Talking about things that people don't really care about, it turns out, grooming gangs. We had that press conference from Nigel Farage alongside one of the grooming gang survivors, Eliane Reynolds, who has quit the grooming gangs inquiry sort of board or liaison panel among, five who've endorsed the government and Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, and 5 who've left. Everyone's of the view that this grooming gangs inquiry is literally collapsing. What do you make of Nigel Farage's plan to effectively try and have parliamentary investigation and do it quickly and get to the bottom of things? Do you think that's going to be a go at all? Is it a good idea but it won't work because Nigel Farage has suggested it?
Well, I think that is true. Nothing is going to happen under this government that's of any value whatsoever. We'll probably spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing very little to solve the problem of those rape gangs. I don't think we should be calling them grooming gangs. Grooming is making people look nice.
Well, no, there's actually quite a lot of survivors say specifically they do want to still use that term so people know what we're talking about. That's one of the reasons why I still use it.
Fair enough. If that's what they want, then that's fine by me. But they are rape gangs, and these innocent young girls, I mean, they weren't even in a position to have any idea of what original sin is. They're in their teens, many of them 11 years old. It's a shocking, shocking story as soon as you start to pick at the surface of it.
I mean, indeed, and everyone's saying, including Nigel Farage, that London is probably, the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. I mean, it's utterly bizarre for Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, also Police and Crime Commissioner for our capital city, that we've had it in 50. It's been, identified in some 50 towns and cities across the country, but uniquely London, with 9 million people, never happened.
No, I think Sadiq Khan exceeds even Sir Keir Starmer as the most useless political leader in the country. Not only useless in the case of Khan, but somewhat sinister in the sense that he takes no account whatsoever of real evidence that, in fact, London, along with those northern cities, is one of the key bases for the operations of these rape or grooming gangs, whatever you want to call them. And it remains. It's not just in the past. this is going on today in London and elsewhere.
This thing, people talk about it as if it's like a scandal at a hospital that happened 20 years ago. It's happening right now, 2 girls right now, and nothing is being done. Just finally, what do you make of Nigel Farage's announcement about the civil service reform? Well, I suppose Danny Kruger, who is one of his MPs who's come over from the Conservative side, about civil service reform and talking about when, not if, Nigel Farage is Prime Minister, the need to sort of take on effectively the blob. I mean, we've seen Labour thinking, oh, we'll be fine because they'll be on our side. They can't get anything done either.
Well, frankly, I think that this is one of the mountains that any future government that wants a decent, well-run Britain has to climb. And I think that Nigel Farage has probably the right motivation. Whether he will get anywhere with this, I don't know. They're so entrenched and widespread. They've got tentacles everywhere. They spread right through the Quangos, the charities, Whitehall, the local authorities, the police, and everywhere else. I don't know how. And also in the classroom. Teachers are now teaching young children that immigration is a good thing. Well, give me the child at 7 and I'll give you the man.
Yeah, we are in mad territory and we're paying for it all. About Layla Cunningham, she's a Reform UK councillor and co-leads Reform UK's Law and Order campaign. Layla, been a bit busy this week, have you, love?
Yeah, we have. Well, the country's been under attack.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? Just the Hadish Kebatu, the migrant sex offender from Ethiopia, deported after that mistaken prison release, a 2-day manhunt. Now we've got a dog walker, Wayne Broadhurst, knifed to death in the most extraordinary, I'm sure you have seen the video, frenzied attack in Uxbridge by an Afghan national. He's the suspect who's been arrested now. It's a triple stabbing. A man and a 14-year-old boy also stabbed very seriously in that same attack. And then we find out this is a man who, the suspect, the alleged suspect, arrived in this country in 2020 in the back of a lorry. Oh, the good old days, the simpler, happier times of backs of a lorry arrivals, not dinghies. And then 2 years later was granted asylum. And what do you make of both of those stories?
Well, what's interesting is Kebatu was deported. He was removed because the state finally deployed some political will and bowed down to public pressure. And that's Julia, that the machinery to deport immediately exists. And the question is why this machinery isn't used proactively. We have the Borders Act that says that once they get a 12-month or more sentence, they must be deported. Why are we waiting until a crime happens, until someone's raped or killed? I want the law to be changed, and I want it to prevent, not react, because preventing crime saves lives. And there was no returns agreement with Ethiopia. They just had to suck it up and take it. And it shows that we can deport immediately if we had the political will. So I want a trigger for immediate deportation, not to be on a serious, by the way, criminal offence. I want it to be the trigger for immediate deportation is on arrival, illegal arrival. So anyone who enters without permission will automatically be deported.
But also, I mean, other countries, as one of our callers pointed out earlier, like Germany, they're able to deport to Afghanistan, even though we haven't got to deal with them. Well, why haven't we got to deal with them? Other countries do. But even I would even argue, just down to a very simple thing, you just say, oh, you don't want, say Ethiopia doesn't want it back, that's fine. There are no flights coming in from Ethiopia from now on then. End of. That's it. That's it. No one gets to arrive from your country in our country then. Because I'm sorry, it's like how Donald Trump has done some of this tariff stuff. They'll pay attention at that point and they'll take those people back.
Of course they will. We don't need a crime to prove a point. We need prevention. And prevention means deporting foreign offenders and, that's illegal migrants before they kill or rape. And you know what, Julia? I am sick and tired of being called racist or fascist because I say that any illegal migrant who enters this country is a criminal.
Because they are.
They are. Because one person killed or raped by someone who shouldn't have been here, it's not just a failure. We don't need statements. It's a destroyed family.
Exactly.
And they're more worried about being polite or politically correct. And if that's the case, then you've got no business being in government. And really, Julia, I am really sick and tired of being called racist or fascist, because if you enter this country, you are breaking the law and I owe you nothing.
Yeah, I don't care whether these people are white, brown or black. I don't care at all. I don't want people in the country who are illegal. Here's the thing. A caller made the point a little bit earlier about accountability. This is Robert. He's saying, how do we hold our politicians to account? How do we... you know, they do this, it carries on. We say we don't want it. We did not give you permission to have these people here. Didn't give you, you know, we told you what we wanted to happen. You don't do anything about it. How do we hold them to account? How will, let's say, Reform do, according to the polls, get in the next election? How do we hold you guys to account?
Well, we have a democratic system, which is flawed, I admit, when people vote for something and they get the total opposite. We have a government that gambles with the lives of the British people to prove how compassionate they are, to bow down to foreign treaties. We want a government that's here to protect our people, not apologise to foreign countries. And if we don't do that, then I'll tell the voters, never vote for us again. And that's how it should be.
That's
because every time an innocent person suffers, ministers behind statements. We're sorry, oops, like yesterday Robert Jenrick was on TV and he said, you know, I'm not going to deny that we got it catastrophically wrong, as if that absolves the Conservative Party of everything they did. Oops, sorry, you know, someone got killed, someone got raped, oops, sorry, but you know, just trust us again.
And again, I've got a Conservative. Claire Pearsall's making faces in the studio here, but I've got to be honest with you, I'm with Layla on this one. There is a sort of, as long as we say sorry, it's okay. I don't know if that's going to fly anymore. Can I just bring you some breaking news? Reports claiming that Hadish Kebatu, the migrant sex offender, the Epping offender who was deported to Ethiopia, he was given a £500 payment. It was up to £2,000. For illegal people in this country and foreign criminals are entitled, amazingly, to up to £2,000 payments. But he was given a £500 payment after threatening to disrupt his removal. Now, I imagine, of course, you're in a situation where the plane can't take off and you're in that situation. What can you do? I mean, I'm of the view that at that point you just you give someone a sedative and you tase them or whatever you do and you put them on the plane that way. But I imagine the airlines won't agree to take someone on that basis. We have paid £500 of our hard-earned money paid in taxes to a sex offender who came to this country illegally, who had no right to be here, committed a sex offence, and now we're paying him to get on a plane. I'm sorry. Why don't we just slap ourselves in the face?
Yeah, exactly that. You know, just come here, commit the most heinous crime, and you know what? We're going to pay you to go back home. I mean,
it's a joke. We are a joke country. We really are.
We are a joke. We're a joke country.
What do you make about the government's crackdown on illegal working? 63% increase in the number of arrests made. They carried out 11,000 raids in the last year. They're kind of upgrading that. There's talk, you know, about more prosecutions of the people, the employers, you know, because basically they're the problem. If they didn't employ people, then, you know, and they knew they'd be caught and they knew they'd basically go to prison, they wouldn't risk doing it. But is that enough?
No, just deport every illegal migrant who comes in here, then we won't have this problem. We saw that it can be done. It just doesn't have the political will. We do not have a returns agreement with Ethiopia. We do not need a returns agreement. We are giving, and people moan about us sending people back to the Taliban, but they don't mind the Taliban coming over here. Who knows, that guy might have been part of the Taliban. They're more than happy for the Taliban to cross the boat and come here. They're more than happy for a convicted bomb maker from the Muslim Brotherhood to come here and have his asylum considered. And in terms of the workers, Julia, we're running a two-tier system, basically. British workers face incredible amount of rules, checks, taxes, and illegal migrants, they just come, no questions asked. We are a joke country right now. And, you know, they're going to try and use this to bring in the digital ID. Nonsense.
Oh, yes.
We don't monitor
but we've seen the polling. The public don't accept that. Can I also ask you just about a press conference this morning? They come thick and fast from your party. The Reform Head of Policies here, Yusuf, said today that young people on disabilities are being tossed onto the scrap heap. They're going to end personal independence payments for claimants with non-serious anxiety disorders. We've seen a huge increase in those. And the caseload for new claims for under 25s in this country, says on PIP, have tripled in 5 years. This is a betrayal of our young people. And they're going to have welfare cuts that would save £9 billion a year by 2029. What do you say about that?
I say we have to do this. And it shows you that taxes are going to go up because we're paying for Starmer's weak leadership. He couldn't get his backbenchers to agree to a cut, and he's not going to do it anytime soon. And basically, we're paying for political weakness, and we just can't afford it anymore. People are tired. We're tired of paying for illegal migrants to be housed in 5-star hotels, 4-star hotels. We're tired of paying for people with slight anxiety disorders to do nothing. As you say, it's not a serious country. We're not a serious country right now. And I think actually when you do have anxiety, and I know people have said this before, I think it is helpful to be doing something. You know, when my sister passed away of cancer 2 years ago.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was, and she was like, I wish I died. from cancer. You know, I watched her, I was her carer. It chips away at every person and every soul of your being, you know, but that's almost what spurred me to get so busy. People say, how can you do all this? And I do it so I don't
keep busy and don't, yeah. Well, I'm
Exactly.
so sorry. I'm so sorry if you lost that, Layla. Hurricane Melissa, which has devastated the Caribbean. We saw arrival of that hurricane at basically gale force 5 arriving on the Jamaica island of Jamaica yesterday, and now arriving in at Cuba. But we are looking at absolute devastation. Some 500,000 people left without electricity, people having to be moved to higher land, and concerns that some whole towns are underwater. Let's talk about it all now with Jacqueline Charles, who's a Caribbean correspondent at the Miami Herald. Very good morning to you, Jacqueline.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I say good morning for some people, maybe, but certainly not for those people in Jamaica or Cuba. Tell us just exactly how devastating, as far as we know, because of course it's only, well, you know, before 7 in the morning in Jamaica right now, and only starting to get images out of just how devastating this hurricane has been. But tell us what we know so far.
So what we know is that across Jamaica, there are blocked roads, there are down power lines. Hospitals have been severely damaged, especially in southwestern Jamaica, where Melissa made landfall sometime around 11 o'clock. Packing 185 miles per hour winds. St. Elizabeth Parish, which is the food producing region, which was hit last year with Hurricane Beryl, that area is underwater, according to the local minister. Of course, we're still waiting to see. We're not hearing much in terms of death reports, so we're hoping that that is good news. Yeah. The Minister of Transport says they're hoping to get at least Norman Manley Airport back up and running on Thursday, at least for recovery efforts. And I need to say that the government has launched an official portal to coordinate relief. This is always an issue whenever a storm comes through the Caribbean. And so you see the government very early on trying to take control of that process.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of time to plan. I mean, there were sort of good things and bad things about the hurricane. One is that, you know, it was good that there was time because it was slow moving. But of course, slow moving means there's more devastation when it hits land because it's on land for so long. But there was time for people to prepare. We know we've seen reports in the media in Britain about, you know, British tourists over, I think, some 7,000 of the 25,000 tourists on the island at the current time, you know, arriving at hotels where, you know, everything's boarded up. They're, you know, doing what they can to keep people and property safe. But how much can be done to keep property and, more importantly, people safe in those sort of devastating winds?
You know, I have covered so many hurricanes, whether it's Jamaica, it's Haiti, or it's the Bahamas. And one of the issues in the Caribbean, but we're seeing improvements on this, is that people don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to evacuate. They don't want to go to shelters. And then everything comes to the last minute. So as we were watching this tropical storm, remember, it was a tropical storm for a week. It was slow moving. And then the reports said, this is going to be catastrophic, people. This is going to be the storm of the century, at least for Jamaica. And so there you started to see people trying to prepare. But I spoke to a farmer in St. Elizabeth. I mean, he has greenhouse. You know, last year it was completely flattened along with more than 200 others. So this go around, I mean, he took off the plastic, he left the metal up, and he said, all I could do was pray. But at the end of the day, I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's utterly devastating. And we often, even when there's warning of high winds in Britain, we kind of almost joke about, oh, someone's wheelie bin has fallen over, a fence has fallen over, because we just don't experience, as a rule, you know, anything like those sort of extreme, weather events. But this is the thing, as you say, this has come after another hurricane, Hurricane Beryl, only last year, and we've seen so many Caribbean islands devastated. I mean, Haiti's just had one thing after another in terms of natural disasters. Yeah. How soon can a country recover from this? I mean, is Jamaica, is it sort of functioning enough government? Has it got the resources? How much help it's going to need from international aid? Well, how do they go about it?
So I have to tell you, you know, this storm, there's never a good time for a storm, and this storm could not have come at a worse time. I mean, Jamaica is a country that a few years ago we were comparing it as the Greece of the Caribbean because of bankruptcy. Remember, you know, these Caribbean countries are still recovering from COVID-19.
Yeah.
Some of them are highly in debt, but Jamaica was one of the countries that was making strides. It's going to need international assistance. And all of this is happening at a time when the U.S. government has shut down the United States Agency for International Development. We at the Miami Herald, we've been asking, the Trump administration, what kind of assistance can Caribbean countries expect when, we saw Hurricane Dorian 6 years ago in the Bahamas. USAID responded, with over $30 million in assistance. They even chartered seaplanes. We don't know yet. I think first we have to figure out what the assessment in terms of the damage is going to be, what kind of assistance. But one of the things we've seen is CARICOM has issued a statement that is saying that, insurance rates, they need to come down. The international community needs to do more. You cannot be charging these extraordinary amounts for loans when these countries, yes, on paper may be middle income, but in reality, they're struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it is always the people at the bottom of the ladder who get hit hardest. They've got the weakest homes, they've got the business, they haven't got the savings, they haven't got insurance. There's very little they can do when these storms hit.
Indeed. And we're waiting to see with Cuba. I mean, Cuba is a country that really can't afford any disaster. Yeah. I mean, the food situation, the humanitarian situation, and yet, they have evacuated 500,000 people. That storm landed as a Category 3 on the eastern part of the island. And so we are watching that closely, given our close ties here in this community. But again, that is a country that truly, if they get pounded, it's really going to be in a bad state.
Absolutely. Right now, let's find out what on earth's going to be going on in the budget. 4 weeks away, front pages today suggesting we're going to see a 2p rise in our income tax. Justin Urquhart, student economist and chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform, and joins us now. Morning to you, Justin.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, more good news, eh? How much should we trust reports ahead of the weeks ahead of budgets? Because it used to be, 20 years ago, nothing would ever come out. Now there's a lot of what's called kite flying by the Treasury to sort of see just the feeling, how do people feel about certain taxes, but also often to set the ground and make us fear the worst. And then when there's only, for instance, a 1p rise in income tax, we all go, phew, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. So how much should we trust these reports?
Yeah, don't trust any of them at all. As
they are them.
That's so straightforward. But as you were saying with Philip earlier, and it's good to see him, a sound common sense as ever. Thank you. But actually, they are kite flying. And what they're going to be doing, if they've got any sense, is actually coming up with really rather some frightening kites. Because if you can actually come out to people who are terrified, so they actually come out with bad news, and it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Work on the assumption it is going to be as bad as you thought it was going to be. So what you're likely to see, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's actually 2p, because what she doesn't want to be doing is coming back every single year saying, that black hole, it's just filled up. That
was the promise from last year. It was going to be tough, but they'd found this £22 billion black hole, and then from now on it'd be fine. And it looks like this is going to be worse than last year.
Yeah, it's getting worse. And of course, the Office of
Budget Responsibility.
They've been changing their story as well. And the Treasury, we're told, are absolutely furious with them because actually the figures going back some years are therefore probably wrong. The other thing she should be doing now is actually kite flying some of the more positive elements. For instance, we know there is growth in parts of the British economy, particularly smaller companies, tech companies, those areas, and they can put they don't have to put government money into this. They can put guarantees up, enterprise investment schemes, those things. You only have to pay for them when things go wrong. Yeah. And so actually have a positive side. But no, what we're seeing is a whole lot of frightening stories coming out, and there's a very good chance that actually some of them may well come true. Yeah. A balance between national insurance and also maybe cutting that by 2%, and then also increasing income tax. That's a reasonable balance, and we'll still give them a positive answer.
Well, that's it. There's been a lot of talk about simplifying things, and again, a lot of people do think when they pay, I paid my stamp, I paid my national insurance all these years, when actually, it doesn't go into a different, it's not sitting there in a little bag in the corner of the Treasury. Like, there you are, that's Justin's money that he's paid in, that'll cover his pension. Rubbish. It's going on day-to-day expenditure on everything, asylum seekers, NHS, roads, you name it. But national insurance doesn't apply to as many things as income tax. So there is an argument for the Treasury. There's talk about, isn't there, cutting national insurance by 2 pence in the pound, but raising income tax by the same amount. So the average worker probably won't notice much difference, but there will be other people who will be more affected by that. Tell us who.
Oh, those filthy swine of people who have actually retired. They're very tiresome. You really shouldn't be having many of them. And find themselves paying much more tax. Fun enough, you sort of plan for your retirement and all those plans go out the window because the rules have changed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid we just have to live with that. We know what it's like dealing with these governments. We're living beyond our means. And you're quite right with regard to taxation. That awful word of hypothecation. The Treasury hate actually putting money on one side to say that is for the NHS or that's particular, because they know full well it's going to actually not work out correctly. So they like to keep a big open puddle there, and then they can do with what they wish.
But isn't the thing, though? I mean, organisations like the Institute of Fiscal Studies and others, they've been saying for quite some time that all this sort of rinky-dink, a mansion tax here, a tax on this, non-doms, that actually, A, it doesn't bring in that much money. B, it actually often doesn't bring in any money at all because, again, the taxing of the wealthy over there, very popular with left-wing voters and backbench MPs and the Labour Party. But actually, as we know, those people are very mobile and they leave, and then you get less money overall, and things like that. But the reality is that if we want the sort of services that people have on mainland Europe in many countries, you have to pay the same sort of taxes, and you're not going to be able to make that sort of money unless you're kind of taxing everyone.
Well, what you've got to do, yes, broaden it out. What you remember, the key line here, taxation does not create wealth. Wealth will allow you to have taxation. Get that the right way round. Now go to those areas where we know we're good at, smaller companies starting up and being able to grow, particularly in technology. We've got a lot of those. And, OK, some will get snapped up by the Americans. Our funding, our market funding from the stock exchange and things like that is absolutely useless at the moment, but that's slightly beside the point. Other point to remember as well, remember actually 1% of income taxpayers, the top 1% actually give us 28% of the total take of income tax. And remember, there are only 3 major taxes: national insurance, VAT, income tax, even corporation tax is relatively small, and the rest of them are glorified sin taxes and don't make any real difference at all. Keep it really, really simple, and actually simplified the taxation system so most people understand it, and that way you'll find less people actually trying to avoid it.
And it'd be harder to avoid it.
Yeah, well, exactly, because they make it clear and simple. There's a Tolley's Tax Guide, there's that book that the accountants take to bed for some excitement. You look at that, that's doubled in pages over the past decade. We've made it far too complicated. So we actually don't strip a lot of that out and focus on the areas where actually short-term creation can help. Back to that stamp duty, well, that's going to be a key one.
Absolutely. I don't think any government's going to any party is going to be able to go into the next election and get elected who isn't promising to abolish stamp duty.